Hi there, my lovely friends. Now, I have got a script for today because I don't want to mess things up. But today, I want to talk to you about the method in the pantser madness. Now, if you're new to the writing world, you could be asking yourself, what is a pantser? Well, I'm a pantser. A pantser is someone who writes by the seat of their pants. There's no outlines, there's no flow charts, there's no index cards all spread all over the place or tacked up to your wall. You basically just sit down and you start writing on page one and you see where the story takes you. For some people, it's extremely freeing. For other people, it sounds like absolute madness. So there is, let me see, how could I put this? There is a secret. Even pantsers need to have some idea what they're doing, a few tools in their toolbox, so to speak, before they get started. There is a method to being a pantser, and that's what we're going to talk about today. If you're wanting to write your fiction book pantser style, then this could be the video for you. Now, let's clear this up first of all. There is no such thing as 100% pantser. Well, maybe, not really. But you see, the thing is that even if you don't write down a formal outline and your brain is still, it's collecting ideas, it's making connections, it forms patterns. So pantsing doesn't necessarily mean winging it without any thought at all. You can't just like verbal diarrhea on the page. It means trusting your gut and letting your story unfold naturally. But that gut needs to be fed. So what feeds it? The first tip, and this is something I've talked about in previous videos, you absolutely need to read a lot. And this isn't blog posts, this isn't flipping through magazines, this is reading books, especially in the genre that you want to write. Reading teaches you almost automatically what feels right in the way a story's paced. You start to notice how the chapters end, how tension builds, and how the characters grow. Even if you don't stop and analyze it, your brain is still soaking it all in. You wouldn't try and play a musical instrument without ever listening to music, would you? And writing is the same way. So whether you like writing cozy mysteries or you're thinking about writing some sci-fi, find the authors in those genres that you really enjoy and start to get a feel for that rhythm. So how the book is paced and how it feels when you're reading it. That rhythm will then duplicate itself when you sit down and write your own book. The next thing you need to know is your genre. And yes, I know I really, really push this point because it's really, really important. You don't have to have an idea of how your book is going to go, scene by scene, a big detailed outline or anything else. But if you know your genre, if you've read a lot of books in your genre, then you've got like a mental roadmap that, like, every genre comes with expectations. A romance ends in a happily ever after. We all know that. A thriller needs that suspense and danger, but it has to be carefully paced through the plot. Otherwise, it loses its edge. A fantasy novel is where you could build a whole world from scratch, but you have to know how to do that. When you know the rules of your genre, you can choose to follow them or not to. You won't, but by knowing what your reader will expect, you're not going to disappoint them by veering off onto a totally different thing altogether. So maybe before you start to write, just think to yourself, like, what sort of story am I going to write? It just needs to be a tagline, something silly, a spooky ghost story set in the 1920s. And that just gives your brain the tiniest bit of guidance to let you know where you're meant to go next. Another element that is particularly important in pantsing is that basically your stories are going to be character driven. Most, not all, but most pantsers don't have any idea about their plot, but they do know what characters, who their main characters are going to be. You know, maybe you've got this idea of a vivid image of a retired librarian who solves crimes, or maybe a young man who wakes up speaking a language that nobody else understands. The beauty of pantsing is that your characters lead the way. If you know inside what your main character is like, their fears, their quirks, their desires, then you will start to know how they will respond to the situations you put them in. And this edges your story along. You just have to ask yourself, as you come to a certain point in your story, what would this character do next? And you'll already have your answer. So give that a bit of thought. Have some idea on who your characters are going to be before you start writing. And the other thing is that you also need to have stakes. All stories are driven in some way or another by the idea of what does your character want and what are they going to lose if they don't get it. It doesn't have to be life or death. It doesn't have to be something real. It could be an inner thing. It could be an anxiety they want to overcome or a fear. But you need to know what that is before you start writing. And then you get the idea, your story, your brain rather, will naturally funnel your story along, providing situations where your character can meet their end goal. But having those stakes and knowing what will happen to your character if they don't get it is really important in helping shove that story along. And finally, you need to trust the process. That's the big thing with being a pantser. You need to trust the process. You need to trust yourself and where you're going, and just keep writing. There'll be some days when your words will just flow. Other days, honestly, it's like pulling teeth, and that's okay. Remember, you're not writing your first draft to be perfect. You are just trying to get the story down. Give yourself permission to write badly. Give yourself permission to change your mind halfway through your story. Follow your character down a weird path to see where it leads. You don't have to stay there, but why don't you give it a go? You can't revise a blank page, so give yourself something to work on. And then on those days when you really don't know and you really don't get it, because writing takes a lot of energy, sometimes that well runs dry. And if you're stuck, don't beat yourself up. Go for a walk, watch a movie, read a book, maybe just sit there and daydream, because sometimes the best part of writing happens when you're not writing at all. Your subconscious is always working on your story. You just need to trust it. A little extra tip, what I do is I write 2 stories at the same time. And then if I'm stuck on one, I think, fine, okay, well, I'll go along and I'll work on this other one instead. I know some authors who write on 3 or 4 or 5 stories all at the same time, because they'll have different moods for different types of books. And then when they're stuck on one, they've always got something else that they can be writing instead. So there you go. There is a method to being a pantser. It's not chaos. It's creativity in motion. It's about trusting your instincts, listening to your characters, and allowing your story to surprise you. I know for myself, I'm at 20,000 words on 2 stories at the moment, and I still don't know how either one of them are going to end or even what's going to happen next. But that's okay, because I'll find out when I go back and start writing. So there you go, my friends. I hope that was helpful. And as always, please don't forget to drop a comment below if you've got any questions. If you want to hear more tips like that, then I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. And tickling that like button does the YouTube algorithm a lot of good. Some of you may be aware I did have a year-long hiatus, and I'm still trying to get YouTube to realize that I've come back. So if you can do that for me, I'd be super grateful. In the meantime, please keep writing, my friends, and we will catch you. Oh, by the way, I was meant to say, I do long form videos on Mondays and Thursdays. So yeah, hopefully we'll catch you back here next time. Keep writing, my friends. Bye.